Chevy just facelifted the Chevy Trailblazer, and I think this is a great redesign both on the exterior and the interior. So I'm going to show you what's changed here and also, of course, talk about some of the spec and tech. So you can get this with only 3-cylinder engines. So they're tiny engines and they go up to 155 horsepower, and you do get a brand new 9-speed automatic transmission, and it also offers all-wheel drive as an option, which I think is really good for this price point. Even though it is just a 3-cylinder, you don't really need a lot of power in this. And then you have the 1.2 liter, which is the base engine, which comes with 137 horsepower, and it only comes with front-wheel drive and a CVT transmission. Not ideal for off-roading. So let's have a look at this. Now let's see what's new here. First of all, I think it looks really cool. It looks nice and it's cleaned up. I'm gonna show you this more when we jump into Photoshop, when I compare the pre-facelift to this facelifted version. This is the active model here, so this is the more off-road looking one. You have the functional skid plate, which for some reason seems to be in chrome, and you also have chrome piece here, which looks decent. It kind of suits a Chevy to have some chrome here, but I'm gonna let you know which spec I would choose for the new Trailblazer when we look at them all down on the page. And then you can also see that the Active has these sport off-road tires. So this is the more off-road sort of rugged trim for the new Trailblazer, and you get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, which is fantastic. The biggest changes happen on the inside, so I'm going to show you, of course, the comparison between the new and the old interior as well, because now you have a diagonal color touchscreen as standard as well. Starting price is just $23,100, but that is for the 137 horsepower inline 3-liter with the CVT and the old transmission, so you might want to step it up to the 1.3 liter. But looking at this design, it looks really cool. It definitely has the Chevy styling in the front end. Not a lot of changes in the side view, more on this later. And here you have the two main trim levels. You have the Active and then you have the RS. I wouldn't say main, but these are the top trim levels of the new Trailblazer, and they cost exactly the same. You also have a couple of new colors and some new interior trim pieces for the new Trailblazer. I personally really like this fountain blue with the Summit white roof. I think it looks really cool. And here you see this new gauge or infotainment screen, which is standard, which it's insane to have this as standard even in the base model for $23,000. So down here we have all the trim levels, starting with the very base LS. And what you can see here in the design of the front end, it's very stripped down, and this doesn't even get the LED bar that we have up here on every single other trim level, which I think is a little cheap maybe by Chevy to not include that, because this is such an important identifier for the front face to have this LED. So they might as well just put it in here. This is $1,200 more, and then you get the LEDs, and you also get some different wheels and the push button start, as you can see. But the trim I would choose is the RS. I think this looks really cool because, as you can see, the Active, as I said, they had this chrome skid plate at the bottom, and here on the RS, this more sporty model has dialed down the chrome and the silver trim pieces, and instead we have a black grille bar right here, the X grille, and we also have a black lower part with some different wheels and tires. I think this looks fantastic, specifically in this blue color that we have right here. All right, so let's jump into Photoshop here and see what is new with the facelifted RS on the exterior before we jump in to the interior. So up here we have the I think this was a 2020 model that when it came out, so it feels like it just came out, and I just made a video on the Trailblazer when it first came out, and we still have the kind of sort of X shape in here. But what I thought about this is that it looks pretty messy, because we have one grille at the bottom that is separated by this X shape, and then we have a top part that has a different separation in a different color, so it gets kind of messy. We almost have 4 different grills in the front end, one at the bottom, or one very low down here, and then we have this at the bottom of the grill, then a third grill up here, and then the fourth grill being this part. So there is a lot going on in the styling of the Trailblazer, so I thought there's definitely some room to clean this up, and that's what I think the Chevy did here with the facelifted Trailblazer. As you can see down here, it looks so much better because now we have, it feels like it's a lot wider, and the reason for that is because look at this, we don't have any body color connecting one end at the bottom, the other side right here, which is what I wanted to have also when I first saw this design, to have a baseline or a foundation for the front end to build upon. I don't mind that we have the big headlights in the bumpers here, as you can see, but this outline for it looks a little bulky, maybe, this chamfer or plastic piece that goes around it. So what they did in the new one, just have a look at first of all the integration of the headlight, how much better it looks on the new one down here. It feels like it's actually supposed to be here and that it's part of the overall design. So much better than this randomly shaped blob that we have sitting in the bumper in the old one. I definitely prefer the way the new one looks. And then we have, this is the active trim level with the more off-roady one with the chrome grille. But you can see how much they cleaned up the graphics in the interior parts of the grille. This looks pretty messy now when you compare it to the new one, because we only have one framing for it at the bottom, one simple framing at the lower part as well, with the same kind of texture in both of these, and then we have one X bar that separates the top part from the lower part of the front face. A really great facelift by Chevy and clean this up. I think the old Trailblazer, it looked really cool, but it has a lot too much going on, specifically in the front end styling. Fix that with the new Trailblazer down here. In addition to that, they also skipped these lights. I don't know if these are the indicators maybe up here. I'm pretty sure maybe that's the indicator or some fog lights or something like that. Actually, you have the fog lights down here, so I'm not really sure what this light is for. And you can see that they totally skipped that light in the new facelifted version, and we only have one simple LED that goes from one point to the other, just a tiny bar. So we have one light here, and then you have a big headlight at the bottom, creating this Chevy look that we see on a lot of different Chevys these days. The Trax, you have the new Silverado EV, has similar graphics as well. But as I said, if I were to pick this, buy this car, I would definitely go for the RS, just because we have the blacked out trim pieces and also the different wheels. Now looking at the rear end, and this is where I'm a little bit split in my decision which one I think is the better looking, because the old one I think has a cleaner or stronger identity with these LEDs, and these look still very modern because they are full LED bar. There's no small little light bulbs in here. It's a full LED cross, almost like a cross graphic inside the taillight, while the new one looks like it only has a slimmer design going like this in two different pieces. So it doesn't have the same connection like the old one has. And honestly, I think this feels more dated than the pre-facelift. I really like this black plastic cladding that we have going around across the entire bottom part of this car. It really does reduce the overall weight of this design because it connects all the way, and we don't have any body colored piece sticking in at the bottom right here like we have on that Lexus that I showed you a couple of days ago. Yes, we have this little dip here, but this doesn't really bother me that much. It's still connected all the way around, and it definitely makes it look less high or tall than what it actually is. Now, last but not least, let's have a look at the interior, because there are some major changes to the interior, and I think this is one of the best updates of an interior that I've seen. I think Chevy has really been lacking in the interior department up until 2022, when the new Silverado came out. Just a complete night and day transformation when it comes not just to technology, but overall feel and quality in the interior. And I think they did the same thing here with the new Trailblazer. I do think the old one didn't really have the same bad quality feel as a lot of Chevy models. It still looked decent, but the new one with this 11-inch touchscreen infotainment screen, which is standard right here, looks really cool. They also redesigned the air vents to make them a little more stylized, and we also have this red outline, which we did have in the previous facelift as well. But the big news is that now the gauge cluster is also digital, and it even made a little hat for it so that it has a roof for the gauge cluster, which I appreciate them doing. I think that's a good idea because, as I said, I prefer it when it sits inside of the dash instead of having this screen being a connection to the gauge cluster like we have in a lot of Mercedes and BMWs these days. I definitely prefer this setup that we have here. A very clean little facelift of the Trailblazer in my opinion. Let me know what you think about this refresh. Do you prefer the new one or do you prefer the old one? Let me know in the comments below.